my presentation in the agenda. So in our project, Informal Language Learning and Media in the Nordics, there is 2 conferences, and there's actually some pilot projects together with public service media. If I'm just going to share the screen here. So there were 3 prototypes planned, one with the Icelandic RUV, one with NRK, and one with DR. This is because we already have apps working with SVT and UR in Sweden, and also with the YLE in Finland, with the YLE Kielikoulu app. And if you weren't present at the first conference, what we do at Språkkraft is that we work with media integrated language learning. So our idea is to utilize the fact that mass media not only carries the language, but it also carries the culture, our values, and a lot of keys to our society. So I said, if you binge watch a series, like in Sweden we have Varuhuset, and this old series that went on for years and years, and it portrays like the everyday life of Swedes and how you behave at work and things like that. Then you learn probably more about Sweden than what you would do in school, I would say. So we try to do this at Språkkraft, the non-profit organization that me and Henrik represent. And we have done this since 2015, 2016, when there was a lot of refugees coming into Sweden. We have 3 different apps in Sweden, and Språkkraft Reading Coach. So Burak mentioned Språkkraft, so that he's referring to the Reading Coach app. And then we have SVT LingvisPlay, which is using all the programs from SVT, so 17,000 programs at the moment. And when they put new programs in there, it's immediately available to everyone to use. And also the news in easy Swedish is also available there. UR is educational programming, and there's a lot of users. So we have over 1.4 million. That's not unique users, but it's like they're using more than one of our apps, but it's more than 600,000 unique users in Sweden using our apps, and they are all connected to an individual learning profile that we use. So when you're watching television, you will see that the format includes that you have an integrated dictionary to 30 different languages. We added Ukrainian 2 weeks after the war started, because I would say all Ukrainian understand Russian, but we will not force them learning Swedish through Russian. So now we have Ukrainian. So you watch the TV program. If there's a word you don't understand, skogsbränder, which in Russian is lesnoy požar, and you can also see that there is grammar analysis, and you can also read up on those grammars, like here for nouns, like how does nouns work in Swedish and so on. And we have these colors that Burak mentions. Okay, so when you on the board, you select a level. In this case, it's A2 level, so the CEFR levels again. What happens is that when you're watching the TV programs, the green words are words that you're supposed to already know at your level. The yellow words are words that you should focus on learning right now. And the red words are words that you can learn later. So this is kind of a scaffolding for your, like a support, because this is not educational material. It has not been authored. It's not even intended for a language learner. So what we instead do is that we provide scaffolding in the authentic material, saying like, if it's all red and you don't understand anything, don't worry. You shouldn't understand this yet. Okay. So, we also point out collocations. So it means that if you see collocations, idioms and things like that, you can also identify them in the language, because if you don't know the language, you cannot identify the collocations, right? Also, it started as a general learning profile. So when you onboard, you're the same as everyone else. But when you watched a TV program, you read a news article, you read a tweet, you can automatically turn that into an exercise format. So you can do closed test, you can do multiple choice, you can do flashcards. And what happens when you do those exercises is that those blocks on the left there turns into a mosaic, okay? So all the yellow words will eventually turn into green. And when you reach a certain threshold, then you level up to the next level, so all the red words will become yellow. So this is your individual learning profile that comes with you. Okay, so now we're going to do a very scary thing. I'm going to demo live, and as we all know, is that when you demo things, it will stop working, it will not work. So that's going to be super interesting. And so let's do this now. Like this. I'll stop sharing this. And I will share here. This is so exciting with technology and things like that. Share Zoom now, right? Sorry? Now I'm sharing this with Zoom now. Okay. How is that? Do Zoom see the screen? Okay. So this is the first prototype that we did with RUV, okay? So Iceland, you have to remember, it's like 450,000 inhabitants there, and yet they have around 50,000 migrants. 50,000 migrants. And the challenge there is that most people, they are working migrants, mainly, and not so many asylum seekers and things like that. Many speak fairly good English, and so they have a hard time, you know, learning Icelandic, because everyone switched to English and so on. But they see it's very hard to actually integrate into Iceland if you don't learn the language. Okay, so here is what we have done with RUV. So let's see if this works. It's going to be interesting.
Jafnmikla trú öllu? Nei, alls ekki sko. Ég var að ljúga, ég var hérna myndi segja það sko.
En þú eiginlega samt getur ekki sagt það.
So this
Nei, ég get ekki sagt það.
Ég er búinn að most of the words are green.
Bröltið næst í 30 ár.
Here you can see that the yellow words and the red words, the words that you presumably don't know, have floating translations. So you should not have to stop playing this program.
Nei, ég oft ekki. En þetta ég oft kenn.
Okay, and if there is a word you don't understand among the green words, you can, of course, stop and you can look up any of these words into the integrated dictionary. Here you can see that there is grammar support, determiner, meter, and then you can also, if you find a green word that you actually, but I don't know this word, I can actually correct this, but by changing the status of this word. Okay. And let's see here.
Ég oft ekki. En þetta ég oft kenna.
So here is an example of these integrated exercises that I can do. So my Icelandic is non-existent, so this is going to be a guessing game for me. So I guess Bladamaður. Was it a good pronunciation? I think so, actually. Bladamaður. Should be journalist, right? Yeah, I got it right. And Vessi should be this, right? If I just guess, and so on. So doing these exercises will update my individual learning format. So that is the RUV prototype. And now let's see if I stop sharing that. Stop share.
Maybe there are some questions while you're switching.
Yes. Any specific questions on this one? Let's see.
There's a question from the room, yes?
Yeah.
You can run down. If you just pick up the mic. Okay. How do you choose which words to put on which level? You use the Kelly list, for instance, or
We started with the Kelly list,
yeah.
but we found it somewhat inadequate, and so we used the Kelly list. We also used some other strategies to do that. So we analyzed, like I guess the Kelly project did, was to look into language learning material that had been graded, and then also combine that with the frequency analysis and things like that. So and it's not perfect, and we would like to encourage cooperation with academia to make it not perfect but improve it. So let's
Microphone.
yeah. So I have to share my presentation again. All this. Okay, so we took this RUV prototype and we scheduled user tests with users. So this is a prototype, so it's not publicly available in Iceland yet. Hopefully it will. It will not be available next year because they didn't have enough funding for it, but hopefully the year after that. Okay, but we did extensive user testing. This is how we work. So we sit down with our users and watch them, observe them using our prototypes and see, if they get the idea and how we can improve it. Okay, so these are actually from Finland. So this was when we prepared for launching the Yle Kielikuulu with the Finnish public service broadcaster. And then, so these are video recordings of users in Iceland sitting, with the app and trying the app and so on. And here is a few words what they said. So I will read these out to you. So RUV LingvisPlay. So one Flavio from Italy, he said, like, there are not many resources to practice Icelandic in a more natural way. That is not textbooks. So this would not only be a great addition, rather a fundamental one. This makes learning much more fun and efficient. We all like to see quick progress. This is like language learning on steroids. Okay, so that was Flavio's view after, committing to use this prototype. So Flora, a researcher from Germany in Iceland. So the service is great as it makes information, news, and the discourse in Icelandic media available to immigrants while at the same time providing language training. This service contains everything one needs to learn Icelandic, live translation of difficult terms, unknown words, insight to grammar, and the option to adapt the language training to a personal knowledge level. Okay, and the final one I would like to share is that this is exactly the kind of service that has been missing for people learning Icelandic. Watching Icelandic news and TV programs will also make the language learner get to know the Icelandic culture and help foreigners to become part of the Icelandic community. So this was RUV. Unfortunately, we reached out to DR in Denmark. We reached out to NRK in Norway, but they did not want to participate in this Nordic project. Okay, and that was a bit unfortunate. So what we did was that we simulated that we would have a prototype. Okay, so what we have done is that we have built a tool in the web browser so that it works on DR in the web browser without their cooperation or anything like that, with the same type of functionality. And our idea now in the last months of this project is to do the same thing we did with RUV in Iceland, to sit down with users in Denmark to try this in and see the reactions and try to document that and then bring that knowledge to DR and see if they think this is a good idea or not. Okay, and of course we've done the exactly same with NRK. So that's going to be very interesting. And here you can see like the argument that they say, why shouldn't we engage in this kind of in this project? So they say that it's not their task to help migrants improve their language. It's like it's not their task. So, and of course the solution to this is of course that those that gives the tasks to public service say that it is your task to help migrants to the language. To me, I love public service. I mean, it's the best thing. But here, I don't really see how they reason. When we talk to YLE in Finland, they have a completely different attitude, because they say that this is the most cost-efficient way to reach a new audience. Like this group, I mean, kids and migrants, that's the only two sources of audience you have. People growing up and migrants, okay. And getting the migrants this is the most cost-efficient way to reach that audience. So it's the public service plays a reason a bit different. Okay. So this was a report on the project for the prototypes. So thank you very much, and I'm open to more questions if you have such, or comments, or. Don't be shy.
There's a question from the room.
Yeah.
But what did the NRK say? Did they have any good reasons for not participating?
Okay. So the situation with NRK was that we reached out to them well before this project came into place. Okay. And they responded that since our app with Swedish television was a separate service, okay, they said like, we don't want to have a separate service. We want to improve accessibility in our own core streaming service, okay? And we couldn't do that at the time. So we came back to them when we had this project and said like, okay, we have an SDK now, like a toolbox for developers. Okay, so now it's super simple you can integrate this into your core service and fun. But then they said that it's not our task, okay, and it's not interesting now, things like that. And it's also important. They also point at like a cost issue, but you have to remember, like in all Nordic countries, they moved from a TV license which you can dodge into public service fee that you can't dodge. Okay, so it means that before, migrants did not pay for public service television. Now they do. So in Sweden, we got the statistic from the Statistics Census Bureau, and to ask them exactly how much money do migrants in this target group pay to SVT. And we came up to like, that's 182 million kronas, that's like 18 million euros, something like that. They contribute to Swedish television, and still they were gonna discontinue this service, and it costs like a fraction of those 182 millions. A question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment, really. Thank you for the presentation. That's really impressive. I think there's an inherent problem with things like that concerning what you just mentioned in terms of costs, and that's the fact that the people that would normally give funding for developing materials for language learning are typically geared towards written material. So this whole new arena of digital resources being developed is just on a completely different scale cost-wise. And I think that there's a mismatch between the people that actually have the funding or the resources able to give funding for this type of material won't do it because it's not their responsibility, and the people who have the responsibility have a different cost normality in terms of digital resources. So it's just bringing out like a general problem about this digitalized language learning material, which I think needs to, I mean, something has to change in the future because stuff like this is really expensive to make, and there has to be funding for new ways of doing things like that.
But if you compare to the 182 millions that the migrants pay,
Yes,
it doesn't cost that much.
right.
So, good. We have a schedule to keep. So unless there is some very important question, you know, that you cannot. Okay, here's another question. Let's take your question.
Yeah, I feel a sudden urge to learn Icelandic, and I think that I would be able to do it using your media. I was just wondering, and I think I have the background and the necessary competences to actually use it. So I wonder what kind of people are your users? What is their background and their resources? Because it seems to me that you have to have certain language skills and competences in order to be able to use your program.
Yes, that's a very good question. I would say that where Duolingo kind of leaves the user, they can start using our solutions. So we are not for absolute beginners. Duolingo is great for absolute beginners. Usually when you know English, that's one of the main challenges. But we say that you can do that. But the thing is that there are TV programs for children that are extremely, you know, on a low level. So if you can bear with the animations and all that, you know, then you can actually learn from that. But it's true that you need to you know, have some language skills to be able to use these kind of tools. When it comes to technical skills, when we started way back, you know, everyone said, like, I mean, refugees, migrants, they can't use computers very well and blah blah blah. The thing was that when we started Språkkkraft, we saw all these people fleeing through Europe with a smartphone in their hand. Okay, so we knew that they were more digital than the teachers, I would say, in formal education for this target group. So technical skills, I don't think it's a big problem. But of course, we need more resources to cater to illiterates,
Yes.
because it's very textual focused, and we know that we can do that if we would have the resources. We could also do this more targeted to children, you know, in a way too. So keeping to schedule.